I hope you enjoyed that digital presentation. I wanted to give you a taste of what is possible when using ICT and how it aids engagement that can appeal to different learning styles, visual and auditory, for example, in that presentation. Now that I have given you a taster, I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes looking more deeply at those three goals of tonight that I outlined earlier. So, number one, what is the evidence of using ICT in the classroom, the benefit of it, and the relevant strategies of learning that I have developed using ICT for our geography classroom? And thirdly, most importantly, what is your role in your students' or your child's education? How can you encourage their study? So, firstly, what is the evidence based position of using ICT? So, ICT's information and communication technologies can enhance the quality of education by increasing the learner motivation and their engagement, by facilitating the acquisition of basic skills, and by enhancing teacher training. ICTs are also transformational tools, which means that when they're used appropriately, safely, ethically, and the class has been really well planned by the teacher, they can promote the shift to a learning centered environment for the student, which is really what we want. We want that student controlling and catapulting their own learning. Through the use of ICT in the classroom, our students will adapt to new forms of technology and learning styles and will develop 21st century geography approaches, which is really important. Then they are capable of completing digital inquiry online, and they're familiar with contemporary approaches to environmental management, particularly with water as a resource. By observing and managing and measuring spatial, environmental, economic, political, social, and cultural factors, geography provides a way of thinking about contemporary challenges and opportunities, and we can do that all through ICT. Teaching and learning in geography is underpinned by inquiry, through which students investigate places in Australia and across the globe that has water. This is now achievable in the classroom in a different way through online spatial technologies, and critical thinking is at the core of knowledge construction. And this is achieved by analysis and inference, explanation, evaluation, and interpretation. All of these are possible through the well-planned use of ICT. An important pedagogy of my teaching is being aware of the different styles in my students and differentiating my class plans so that I accommodate and can include all of them. Inclusive education refers to all children that have the right to an inclusive, quality education in both the teachers and the learners' view that diversity is a positive attribute. So there is a lot of diversity in the student learning, and I have made every effort to plan for that. The model of learning called Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, has gained increasing recognition worldwide as a platform for differentiating instruction in inclusive classrooms. It gives us a framework for creating that differentiation, and there are three principles of learning that teachers need to adhere to when they plan their classes and their lesson plans, and those three are representation, action and expression, and engagement. And those three I've used in planning the 5 tasks that I'm going to go through in a moment. So representation, that's the what of learning, presenting information in various ways, and that's really achievable with ICT. The second principle, action and expression, that's the how of learning, and that's differentiating students and the way expressing what they know so that they've got their own choice, and that's again very important in learning and can be achieved in ICT. And engagement, the why of learning. So ways to stimulate students' interest and their motivation, again, very possible and helpful through the use of ICT in the classroom. In addition to UDL, I've also looked at the SAMR model, the SAMR model of ICT integration into the classroom. It provides a framework when and how to use ICT to make sure that it's only done when it's absolutely necessary. I've been able to modify the tasks and redefine the tasks to make them more challenging using ICT. So now let's look at goal 2, which is to explain the relevant strategies that support ICT. So what strategies have I developed as part of this unit on water in the world? So I've created 5 teaching and learning activities using ITC for the students in geography, and they're exciting, they're innovative, and they all use digital spatial technology, which is free to all students online. All of these These activities use different spatial technology websites using geographical information system software, which is also known as GIS. And they're ways to engage students and can double up as activities that can be used to assess students' knowledge of basic water concepts and how to apply them, research it, how to analyze and use that deeper level of thinking, which is what we really want the students to be able to problem solve on real life, authentic basis. Example, how can we recycle water in India? Spatial technology can allow for that deeper thinking. So these following examples and activities, they can really be used as well for recording the student's success and provide examples of work to report back on to you as the parents and the carers. So such as virtual field trips that students might be able to create using tourbuilder.com. That's then a physical, tangible project that I can show you on what the students have been doing in class. I can also assess the student knowledge and their application of their concepts on that task and assign them a grade for it. So it's really helpful to be able to assess and report back to you as the parents. So the first task is using tourbuilder.com, which I showed you some images in the previous presentation digitally. And that just allows students to import images. They can do a virtual digital field trip. They can embed tasks into the actual field trip, such as measuring distances and contour heights. And they can create something that's very visual, and they can use that to present back to us to show us what they've researched, so us as a class. So there's a lot of peer collaboration and group learning through this activity. The second activity is using AusCoastal website, which is an Australian government website where they've used a lot of the Geographical Information System, GIS, layers to create different platforms for students and the general public to go into it and look at the water impact on coastal towns. So they'll be looking at sea level rising, they'll be looking at rivers, the potential for flooding, and what the impact would be on a social and an environmental basis. So it's a very interactive tool. The students love using it, and they can undertake key inquiry investigations and skill building tasks using that website for water management. The third website and activity is using Earth Nell School, which is really a GIS platform for creating layers around temperature, climates, cloud cover, precipitation, humidity, and it looks at the precipitable water that's available live across the globe. So we can use that for students to investigate which countries are more prone to having access to better fresh water and why. And then they start to think about the different hemispheres, the equator, the impact that may have on location and their water availability. The fourth activity is using Scribble Maps. So again, this is using GIS. It's a different type of mapping system, and they can look at data, they can look at vegetation, they can look at land use, and then they can look at the actual symbols that they can put into that map, and they can use different annotated labels such as the Brisbane River catchment system, and they can categorize that research that they're going to do and then insert different symbols for that. So it's really helpful, particularly for those students that are more tactile. They want to be more busy doing something, allocating something, and not just observing. It's really helpful for those types of students. And the fifth activity website that we would be looking at is very well known and well used globally website, which is Google Earth. It's just an incredible resource to use in the classroom, particularly when physical field trips are impossible. We can't, unfortunately, go to the Nile Delta right now. It's a bit far, it's a bit expensive, but using Google Earth we can, and it's incredible how they can measure, they can compare places, they can look at physical images, they can look at rivers, icebergs, and then again identify those water spaces and where they are. And they can go at an entire global view, or they can bed down, zoom very specifically to one tiny creek or tributary that is responsible for creating the Murray-Darling Basin, for example. So it's a very useful tool to allocate to students in the classroom for various tasks. So looking at the research and why it's important to use ICT and how I've created those tasks, I've really looked at educational thinkers like Piaget and Vygotsky, and they're very supportive of student-centered learning, and that's the ICT task that I've created. It also supports Howard Gardner, who through his theory of multiple intelligences highlighted the visual spatial learners and their use of intellectual modalities in terms of visual learning. So that visual capacity creativity through digital tasks, it's just endless. It really is only by the imagination, because in terms of what is available online, there always is something that we can adapt into the classroom. So there are images, videos, graphs, all available at the touch of the button. So previously dealt concepts, things like measuring distance on a topographic map, we can now create something that's fresh and it's captivating using something like scribble maps, where students feel really engaged and they can change things if they don't like it, they can remeasure it, they can test it, and it's all digital and available at the touch of a button. So as long as the ICT activity is ethical and it's safe for students, the learning opportunities really are endless. And that brings me to my final goal that I'd like to go through this evening. And that's really your role as the parent and as the carer. What is your capacity to encourage your students' learning? And I trust through this online digital field trip that I've shown you the benefits of what can be accomplished through your child's learning using innovative and digital tasks online. And I want to firstly thank you so much for your time in coming this evening and listening to this. But also I want to encourage you to support your child's learning. There's really many ICT activities that rely on the student's access to computers, the internet, and the various online spatial technologies. And they will need your support and encouragement to be able to use those. So I would really ask you to support your child in their learning, helping them to navigate online, giving them the time to do that, the flexibility to do that, to help them to become comfortable using these programs, and the freedom, I suppose, to explore at depth and at breadth what is possible online when learning about geography, to fuel their curiosity and engagement with these tasks. It's also wise to discuss the sustainable use of technology with your children. So being digitally safe online and what that may mean for you and your family. I would really encourage you to go through that and think about how you can ensure that your students are and your children are safe online. And don't just assume that every piece of website that they might go onto will be ethical. It's a very good idea for you yourself to experience the platforms and see how and what you're prepared to have your child have access to. Another really important part of this unit is the community involvement in their learning, which can be really helpful from a tangible perspective. So I would encourage you to take your child to the city library or to the museum, ask the librarians to show them materials on water in the world, perhaps specific to Queensland. Another idea might be to encourage them to speak to older neighbours or family in your street and get their views on the necessity for water. What experiences have they had with water? Maybe some of them will remember the 1974 and the 2011 floods in Brisbane, that were exacerbated by the king tides. What did that mean for them from a social and a spatial and environmental, economic effect? What power did that water have? So really building their communication and perhaps even showing their older neighbours what's possible through the use of spatial technologies now, using software like OzCoastal, looking at that flood mapping that can now be projected and forecast, and they might learn something from your child as well. So make it relevant to them, make their learning relevant as much as possible in their everyday life. And just a final thought for you. We talk about the 6 C's of innovation needing in education to prepare our students for life after school once they graduate and go out. And those 6 C's are creativity, character, citizenship, communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and collaboration. And integrating ICT into the classroom helps to facilitate many of these C's, which is really fantastic. We are living in a rapidly changing technological world, and it is now more important than ever that we give our students the opportunity to pair their knowledge acquisition with ICT practice. So I hope that you are on board, and I look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thank you so much.